7-11 Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards on your wet and damp Wednesday morning. So we need something to brighten our spirits. So what would that be? Well, let's see. In our world, it's usually winning at gambling. That's nice for the kids, isn't it? Isn't that lovely show? In talking with Dave Bastl last night, people must realize I still do. We're still very close. And I was mentioning what was going to happen this morning. And he said, Esther's going to be on the show. And then I told Esther, yeah, Esther was asking about you. He goes, well, you got to tell her. I said, huh? You have to tell. She is like the best person ever. I said, she is the best person ever. And she joins us now. So if the world isn't really knowing of the wonderful world of Et, here she is this morning. Good morning, Esther Herbert.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And Brandon, nice to see you now for the first time. I've been listening to you for about a year. Enjoyed you thoroughly.
Yeah, Esther is literally like my private consultant. If we don't get a chance to talk, I get these little information packets, these audio clips that sort of round up and are very concise and intricate about what has happened on the show and her perspective and her take on each given segment. And they're brilliant. I mean, she probably should be a radio consultant. And people would come to understand that knowing Esther as I have since the age of 5 and being a block apart from where we lived in our small town of Stouffville, there's very few, I would say, a relationship between a man and a woman where usually when they see people as close as us for this long, they'd say, oh, you're like brother and sister. We kind of are, but it's kind of closer than that. I don't know how else to put it. And people in Stouffville kind of got used to it because I think it's very, very rare. Yeah. Sadly, it's rare, but it is rare where we rely on each other and have our whole lives so heavily on a daily, really a daily basis. And yet there was a secret that Esther had that is common in the topic that we're going to talk about, to hide things, to not let other people know what they're suffering from. So to know someone this closely, as closely as I could, any other human being, and not know that she was suffering from bipolar, so mental illness, no one knew until she told us. How many years would you say you broke the news really publicly that we would know? How long are we saying really that is?
I would say 2017 is the first time that I actually became public with the knowledge that I had bipolar. I had a few friends, obviously those that went and visited me at the hospital in the year 2000 when all of this broke. They knew. But I just decided I wanted to keep it to myself. I didn't understand myself in high school. It was a little scary of an experience, and I masked it with all kinds of alcohol and drugs and so forth. And I thought I was doing a fine job about it. But I had all kinds of problems as an adult. I got kicked out of university. I, became an alcoholic, obviously. And I had problems relating with the world, as most people do. We like to chat with people and tell them some stories and get a little sympathy and just be a part of people's lives. I was the one that usually did the listening, and that was about the extent thereof. And when I did finally come out with this news that I had bipolar and had been battling it, my doctor said since about 15, it was so liberating. It was so freeing. It was such a thrill to tell people that, I understand what you might be going through. If you're going through depression, I understand that bipolar is extreme depression, extreme mania, and then how to manage in the middle. So I could relate to a lot of people, and not only just that particular disease, people battle with anxiety, and they battle with, severe depression. They battle with things that they never want to talk about, especially men. I will have to say they have a hard time admitting any weakness. And I totally understand that. In that regard, I was the same. I just wanted to be me. I wanted to be accepted. And I thought I'm never going to be accepted if I talk about mental health issues. But I was so wrong.
Well, and here's what people also have to understand in hearing the story. So you would talk about, alcohol and drug issues. So one might gather from this conversation then that you were a party girl, that you were someone that was, in that scene. And I'm here to tell you, it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it was quite shocking. I upon me going to the hockey player parties or other house parties, I'd sort of, look at Esther and say, well, I'm going to a such and such party. It's not for you. This isn't your crowd, like I'm protecting her and she would be so nice. Little did I know that her experience behind, and I mean closed doors, I mean like steel curtain, that no one would have ever have guessed that Esther Herbert would be dabbling in any of this, because she literally, in a lot of ways, for a lot of people in my high school and in my town, in which her family were very high achieving, very high IQ brothers and sisters who were very gifted people. If you go to my elementary school, the school that Esther and I went to, you look at all the achievement awards academically, and it's all the Herbert family. It just was that way. So there's no way I could have ever have thought that Esther would struggle with these problems. But therein lies the difficulty of the disease itself, in that people become very good at hiding. They become very good at sneaking, and because of Esther's IQ, it's like a master class. There is nothing that probably she could not have hidden from anybody for as long as she wanted, and that's the problem. If she doesn't speak about it, and now she's hired by a lot of companies, for those listening this morning, to talk to their staff, to talk to the employers themselves as a group, to recognize that there could be these issues that you're completely unaware of. There are some things to look for, but the reality is, unless you bring it out and talk about it, these people could go on and try to hide it until something very bad happens.
Yes, in the media, we have seen so many people that we are just shocked that they would take their lives. Wynonna Judd, for instance, a 78-year-old grandmother with a shotgun. I mean, those are horrible things. Twitch recently, a very happy appearing man with children dancing, recording those dances a couple of days before he took his life. I mean, we have sadness all around us. And the reason I mentioned people in, the media, they just have higher exposure. It gets people talking more. I'm not discounting the poor person on the street corner that nobody thinks of, but there's lies the problem. It hits every socioeconomic stratosphere in the world, and we just don't talk enough about it. Now, we are much better. I think that the stigma is starting to fall, but I mean, starting to fall, and how far we have to go is miles and miles apart. Now, I want to do my part to talk about stigma, because every single one of us listening today has someone in their life that is battling a mental illness. They say 1 in 5. I think it's a lot more than that. But I mean, even if you think of 1 in 5, the people that you glance around at, maybe at the dining room table, there's somebody that's having a lot of problems. And I feel for them, but they won't get help. They won't feel liberated. They won't go about a new mission of informing people about mental health issues and solutions and how to manage. That's the key. You think, well, I have this horrible albatross around my neck and it's bipolar and I'll never be able to do anything again. That's wrong. I mean, you can inspire people in the midst of your struggle, I think, much more than on the mountaintop saying, woo, I've arrived. That doesn't happen. I think we all struggle.
Now, we're in conversation with Esther Herbert here on Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards. The one thing that I've learned from the many conversations that we've had about this is the difficulty sometimes in those wanting to accept the medication, or sometimes the mix or the cocktail that actually allows them to live the most normal life that they can. I mean, we're not saying you get these magic pills and everything goes away. We know it's not that. Right. But there are those that really do fight the idea of medication. Even parents that have young children, they don't like the fact that their kids will be medicated. And I think we have to, that's another stigma we have to overcome, because they feel that it deadens them or it takes away part of their life. But to me, and my understanding of what you've been through, is it sometimes does take time to find the right cocktail so they don't become mummified. They're not zombies. But it really is very dangerous to think that you can live this kind of life not medicated.
Well, I mean, I hate to mention something so sad, but I will, because I think it's a good education. My sister was diagnosed with bipolar, and she was an alcoholic. She got hit by a train, 3 times the legal limit of alcohol in their system in Colorado. Her life was forever changed. She then went to self-medication. She didn't want to take her bipolar. medication, because it did what you just said. To her, it deadened her. She didn't have the creativity. She was very depressed and so forth, but she didn't want to try something new. She didn't want to do that cocktail thing that you mentioned. And unfortunately, she died of an overdose in 2013. And that is a very pitiful example of someone who didn't want to cooperate with the rules and cooperate with her doctors and her psychiatrists. And, it got so bad that nobody would want to work with her, even the psychiatrist, because she just wouldn't do what she was told. Now, I'm saying that that's a really hard case. I was a person that wanted to cooperate because my life was just blown into bits. It's a long story, but the day that I was handcuffed and let out of my place of employment was a huge awakening experience for me. And I wanted my life back. I wanted my mind back, and I was willing to do anything. Now, for someone that's kind of stubborn and pig-headed, that's exactly what I needed, something very dramatic to touch my life and change it. Now, it doesn't mean that one is good, one is bad, but for me, that's what worked. And I just think that people out there need to have encouragement. It's a world that's gone awry. Anybody can talk to on the street about what is happening in the world today. I've heard you mention it. It's very sad, but we have to do something. That old saying that, for evil to triumph means good men and women do nothing. So we need to do something. And everybody is capable of touching someone in their sphere of influence. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Well, and we talked about something personally that I thought was a great example of how the world can come together. Now, of course, we talk about sports, every single day. We're basically a sports show. And of course, one of the bigger stories recently has been Damar Hamlin. And, in a world where it seemingly it's hard to find the good stories. It's hard to find the nice stories. It makes everyone feel great. I talk to Brendan every day. I go, should I read these? Should I read these headlines today on CP24? He's like, don't do it. And then I start reading, they're all bad. But the Damar Hamlin seemed to be an example of the world showing itself that when they do care, because I think the world does. I think deep down, they really do want to do well. Yes. That they did good by this young man, and the world just kind of seemed to put a little bit of a bow on it, saying, if we pull together, that maybe we can achieve something. And I thought, in talking with you, you brought that up, and that was a very interesting perspective.
Well, it is so amazing that such a tragedy brought so many people together. It wasn't just Cincinnati and Buffalo. It was the entire country. USA, then it leaked over into Canada and so forth, went around the world. It was a global story. It made people want to, link arms with their brother and, write posters and notes and encouragement and get down on their knees and pray. They really wanted some change, and they wanted it together. And they felt that camaraderie in the face of such tragedy. And I thought to myself, that's humankind. They're on the brink of wanting to do something amazing in this world. I think everybody is ready to charge forward and do something, but we have to encourage each other, because sometimes we get frightened. Do we really want to step out on a limb and do something good? Do we want to help people? Will we be ridiculed for it? Or is it something that I even really want to do? Well, yes, of course you want to do. It's innate. It's inside you. It's something that was built from above inside each person. And I just read an article about Josh Allen. He said that whole experience was a spiritual awakening for him. And I thought to myself, how wonderful. A QB in the NFL is telling us that he was spiritually awoken by the events of that day, and by the fact that the next game they had a touchdown on their first play of the game. And that hadn't happened in 3 years. And he was like, that has to be the powers above. And I thought to myself, there you go. There's an example. If we would just talk about it.
Are you saying that you believe God is a Bills fan? Is that what you're telling me?
I think he's a Mankind fan. Right, Brandon?
Well, he gave us you, and for me, that's been a gift I've had since I was 5 years old, and I don't take that lightly. You're just such a breath of fresh air, and a wonderful person, and you're just so intuitive to things in this world, and yet I know it's not easy day to day. It is a battle for you, and thank goodness for Dr. Mark Berber and those at Markham Stouffville Hospital who you speak to very often and speak on behalf of very often.
Yes.
If you're listening here this morning, I do see some tweets coming in. If you want someone to speak to your staff on these kinds of issues, you cannot go wrong. You just heard Esther Herbert. That's what she brings to the party. And I thank you so much, my friend, for joining us here this morning. I know I will talk and hopefully see you at some points very soon.
Yes.
But you do a wonderful job, and you just made our mornings being here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, both of you. God bless. Bye.
That is Esther Herbert joining us here this morning. The issue, of course, mental illness, and she has talked very brilliantly about how one should go about it. And as I said, Brendan, to have that person even just a part of this show. I mean, she has spoken quite often about you. Just to me personally, goes, oh, since he came on and the way he talks now, and he's so good, and he does this and he does. I'm like, oh, okay, enough about Brendan. Let's get a little back to Mike. See a little bit more me. But she really is wonderful and a huge Brendan Lang fan. I can tell you that. So and Dave Bastl, just so you know.